Behemoth is the Balzer Mabillard Hypercoaster at Canada's Wonderland. This ride opened as the tallest and fastest coaster in all of Canada, and it's still one of the park's most popular attractions. But is it a top-tier B&M? Find out in this review of Behemoth. Cedar Fair acquired Paramount Canada's Wonderland back in 2006. Ontario's largest theme park had 14 different roller coasters, but it had a disturbing lack of quality. Vortex, which was an old Arrow suspended coaster, was widely considered to be the park's best coaster. That was absolutely ludicrous for a park of this scale. I could not name another park with a coaster lineup with as many subpar coasters. Cedar Fair immediately began investing in their recently acquired Paramount properties. The company purchased a trio of B&M hypercoasters in the late 2000s. Canada's Wonderland received Behemoth first in 2008. Kings Island received Diamondback in 2009, and Carowinds received Intimidator in 2010. All three rides have similar stats and feature a sea of camelbacks. Behemoth was placed in the back of the action zone. The coaster's giant hills run along the road entering the park, which gets guests hyped for their day. The coaster's bright orange track also makes its mark on the park's skyline. You can see this coaster from miles away, and it looms over much of the park, especially if you're in the Splashworks water park. That section of the park offers some of the best views of the attraction, showcasing its scale because it towers over the wave pool and water slides. Like many Cedar Fair coasters, Behemoth has a great entry plaza. The coaster's name is spelled out with large letters above the queue line and final turn. This stylistic decision just adds to the sense of scale for a coaster themed to a large biblical monster. The coaster itself doesn't have any theming, but that's fine for this type of attraction. Behemoth is one of the park's premier attractions, regularly boasting one of the longest waits in the park. On average, this ride has a 30 to 60 minute wait most days. Most people head to Leviathan or Yukon Striker first, so you can usually experience this ride with low waits early in the day. Behemoth thankfully has good capacity. The lines are almost entirely due to demand. Behemoth regularly runs 3 trains, each seating up to 32 riders. The crew does a pretty good job keeping the trains in motion to minimize double stacking, and that's even with guests being able to store their belongings on bins on the ride platform. Behemoth has assigned seating. More often than not, they load the train front to back, but the groupers are usually willing to honor seating requests for vacant rows. There is a dedicated queue line for the very front row, but they don't always let you wait for the other seats. So if you want to try the back and you see it open, I would advise requesting it. I think that back row has the better airtime by a bit over any other seat, but you're going to get oodles of floater airtime in any row. The one downside with the back row is there's a very noticeable rattle in every single valley in the first half. This is the biggest downside with Behemoth in my opinion. After a few rides, it's enough to cause a headache. Fortunately, this is much less of an issue towards the front of the train. The only valley that's rough through the entire train is the pullout from the first drop, so I like to alternate my rides between the front and back rows for this reason. Now let's talk about the trains. Behemoth was the first B&M Hyper to feature a staggered V-style seating, a feature that was also given to the other 2 B&M Hypers Cedar Fair added after Behemoth. Behemoth has 8 cars per train, and rather than seating riders 4 across, each car is 2 rows of 2. The first row of a car seats riders side by side. The back row of a car seats riders on the edge. This results in a better view because you have more space between the car ahead of you. It does lengthen the train, but the hills are designed with that in mind. The clamshell restraints are typical for a B&M. They are extremely comfortable and allow for plenty of floater airtime. Like the other Cedar Fair B&M Hypers and Gigas, there are seat belts as well, but they have no impact on the ride experience in my opinion. They just slow down loading a bit. Once dispatched, you turn out of the station and ascend the 230-foot or 70-meter tall lift hill. This hill offers a great view of the entire park, plus the Toronto skyline in the distance. Once at the top, you are thrown over the 75-degree first drop, and this is a well above average drop for a B&M Hyper. The longer trains cause more whip in the back, so you get forcefully lifted out of your seat and treated to some very strong and sustained floater airtime. Even those up front will get some weightlessness, but this element needs to be experienced in the back. It's the main reason I prefer that row. The pullout is the rattliest part of the ride, but it is also the most forceful. This is where the ride hits its max G-force of 4.5 Gs, and you'll feel it. Next is a large Camelback. This hill delivers great and very sustained floater airtime throughout the whole train. It is the best Camelback on the ride without a doubt. You then navigate a hammerhead turnaround. The long trains result in some good pull in the second half of the element as you're yanked back down to the ground when you rebuild your speed. Behemoth then navigates 3 consecutive Camelbacks, each one with a trim on it. I forgot this ride had so many trims because the Carowinds Intimidator is usually the one that gets criticized for the trim-heavy one. But I think this one goes under the radar because they don't really impact the airtime. Sure, the odds are that likely you'll feel one of them hit, but I still got good sustained floater airtime on all 3 hills. What these trims do is they help the ride run equally as well on a hot and cold day. On my most recent visit, it was a windy day. I can think of a few B&M Hypers prone to closing in winds, but Behemoth was cruising over its hills in 20-mile-per-hour gusts. The other nice feature about this trio of hills is their location next to and above the water. This sequence ends by jumping into a mid-course brake run. If you're up front, you will get some decent floater airtime here. The resultant brake does slow the train down a considerable amount, but the ride still has a fun finale in store. It starts with a 540-degree downward spiral. You get some okay positive G's by the end of the element when you rebuild some speed. You then twist upwards and drop back down to the ground. And this dip gives some nice floater airtime if you're in the back rows. Rather than going straight into the final brake run, you have one last bunny hill that I always seem to forget about. You get some decent floater airtime throughout the train. You then hop into that final brake run, getting one last weak bit of airtime up front. You then slowly navigate through the brake run, ending the 5,318 foot or 1,621 meter long coaster. While this ride has similar track length to the Leviathan, this coaster is 25 to 30 seconds more of prime ride time. Now that suggests that Behemoth has worse pacing, but I do think this is one of the better paced B&M Hypers. The ride has strong floater airtime on every hill in the first half. Then Behemoth has a solid finale too, with the helixes and extra airtime hills. For me, pacing is about how engaging a layout is, and I like almost all the elements on this coaster. So what would I rate Behemoth? I would give this B&M Hyper an 8.5 out of 10. I love this coaster's layout and all the airtime it provides. B&M Hypers are notorious for their sustained floater airtime, but the airtime on this one seems a bit stronger and more plentiful. The lone con with this coaster are those shaky valleys, which can impact this ride's re-rideability if you experience it further back in the train. If this ride was glass smooth, it would easily be a top tier B&M Hyper. I ultimately prefer Leviathan in the same park for that coaster's speed and power, but Behemoth is an above average B&M Hyper, and it offers more airtime than Leviathan, so they can coexist. It's not in the top tier of B&M Hypers, but it's in that next grouping. It's the best of the trio that Cedar Fair installed because of the ride's consistency start to finish. So those are my thoughts on Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland. Do you prefer Leviathan or Behemoth? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canada Coaster. Thanks for watching.